we're not aware of it. It was actually birth contraceptions. It was the pill they were providing to girls 11 years of age and older without parental involvement or consent. And that was a decision made by the school board. Now, my understanding is that the cry that has come from the citizenry is so loud, and by the way, a national response as well, that they're backing off of that. I don't know how far they've backed off yet, but obviously that's just absolutely nuts. I mean, Barack Obama earlier this year said that he thought that kindergartens ought to have age-appropriate sex education. Kindergarten, all right? And I came back and said, wait a second, the age-appropriate sex education in kindergarten is none. And yet there are some liberals, that just want to take our country in a very unusual direction. And that idea among that school board is just completely out in left field. I even heard that, actually I just saw on a website this afternoon, and so I can't confirm it yet, but that the district attorney in that area where the school was said you'd have to report people that were sexually active that are that young. It would be a reportable, it's illegal. So, and I don't know exactly how the law works there, but you know, there will always be some liberals that have a very different view about what makes a strong nation. And in my view, a strong nation starts with a strong home. And so it's critical that we protect those homes and the strength of those homes.
I know religion is kind of a touchy subject with you being LDS and all, but as a fellow LDS member, I was wondering, as president, do you think that regular temple attendance or temple attendance at all on your part would be controversial to the public, and how would you handle that?
I don't think anyone's participation in their faith is a problem in this country. I think we do not select people who are running for office to become president or to become a nominee based upon where they go to church. I think instead we want to see people that subscribe to the values we think are important. And virtually all the faiths that you're familiar with in this country flow from a Judeo-Christian ethic, which says that there's a God, that we're all children of the same God, that the God who created us gave us certain inalienable rights, and among them are liberty, and liberty therefore is a gift of God and something to be protected. These principles, these values are, in my view, fundamental to our society and shared among all faiths in the Judeo-Christian world. And so I think in the final analysis, people don't care about what church you go to, they care about what values you have. And on that basis, I expect to have the kind of values that will get me elected. Thank you. Yes.
Thank you. My name's Julie Hayes, and I have a group called Kiyakat for Darfur, and our group is raising awareness of the atrocities in Darfur. According to the LA Times, you have divested your holdings from companies doing business in Iran, and you've urged states to do so. So as a presidential candidate, can I ask, have you divested your holdings from companies doing business in Sudan and that contribute to the atrocities in Darfur?
Actually, my personal investments, I don't manage and haven't for 4 years. Because when I ran for governor, I took the investments I had and gave them to an outside third party and said, please manage those in such a way that I don't lose my money, but I don't want to have conflicts of interest that might exist between something I've invested in and the decision I need to make as a governor. So I don't know where my investments are, but I've asked the person who is the trustee to try and keep my investments consistent with my political views, if he can. And sometimes they can do that well, and sometimes if they're in a mutual fund, they probably can't. But I certainly agree that an effort to avoid investments in enterprises which have substantial business in places like the Sudan is a great idea. There are some nations that are really evil. I mean, what can I say? There's some leaders that are truly evil. I think Ahmadinejad is one of those, and I think in the same way that when you have a leader, as you do in the case of the Sudan, which is in some respects allowing or even perpetrating genocide on people in his own country, that this is not an acceptable setting and that we should do everything to employ the sanctions. The President's just put in place a whole new series of sanctions against the Sudan. I support that. I want to put as much pressure as we can economically and diplomatically on the Sudan and their leadership.
Can I also ask, on your website there is no position on Darfur. So
I've given speeches and been asked this. There's a lot of stuff that's not on my website. I mean, you can, but I've given speeches on this. Or excuse me, I've spoken on this topic and made the same points before.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am. Way back there.
Yes, as you notice what I'm wearing. So therefore, I'm Smee Schulte, and I'm going to go to Massachusetts in a couple weeks
Oh, good.
after Christmas. So my question is,
That'll make 3 Republicans in the whole state when you're there.
well, anyway, my question is, what is your accountability on health and financial security, which is our Medicare and our Social Security? I understand they want to make cuts, privatize Social Security. What are your?
I'm not in favor of privatizing Social Security or making cuts, but I do believe that we're going to have to reform Social Security, not for our seniors, but for those that are coming along down the road, because Social Security cannot continue the way it is. And the 2 major paths we have are, one, to raise taxes on people, which I don't want to do, and the other is to allow some portion of people's money that they're now having taken out of their salary to be invested in Social Security, have some of that be allowed by them to be invested in.
That's privatization.
You call it privatization, I call it a private account. You don't want privatization?
I call it private.
But you don't want privatization then?
No.
And do you want higher taxes?
I don't want the kids to invest their money because of the fact a lot of them would invest it and they would, because they're living so high that they would have the expenses that if they got it in their hand, they would use it for something else.
Well, they don't get it in their hand.
Well,
So, no, let me tell you that the proposal the president made is that if people have some portion of their income taken out, that they can direct a trustee or an entity to invest in certain approved investments. They don't get to invest it everywhere they want.
sure,
It's
that's
for
what
instance-
Wall Street is for.
Well, that's what America's for, all right? Which is investing in our future. And by the way, you know what they're doing with it now? You know what's doing? Well, all your money's going now?
First of all, it should have never been put in the pie.
Yeah, well, it's been put in the pie. That's number one. And number
But
two,
it should be taken out of
yeah,
the
but
pie.
but where it's going now is in this big pie. If they'd have put it in Wall Street 50 years ago, we wouldn't even be talking about a Social Security problem. If they'd been investing in this country, we'd have money coming out of our ears. But instead, they took all that money out of the pie. That's wrong. I'd take that money that's now being taken out every year in the pie and let people invest that in approved investment vehicles, whether it's bonds, government bonds. They could make choices. That, I think, is a way of helping solve the problem. And they're
You're saying that they can't just go further away and wait.
no, no one proposes that it's going to get the money and spend it the way they want to. The president's plan, which called for private accounts, was to say, you know what, all that money that we're taking out and putting into the government pot, we should let people instead invest in America if they want to. And my view is this: a couple of things. One, we're going to protect Social Security. We're not going to pull back on the promises made to our seniors. It's going to get reformed by Republicans and Democrats coming together to make sure that it's always viable. I don't believe in raising taxes. I certainly don't believe in having it entirely privatized. I don't mean that, but I do believe that private accounts, as the president proposed, that was a good idea. I also believe that it's a good idea to get all of our citizens insured with health insurance, and that we're going to reduce the burden on our healthcare system by getting everybody insured. But again, I don't want to raise taxes to do that. Thank you. Yes.
So going along with what she said, you're saying that if we get the Social Security and do the private
Accounts.
You're saying the private accounts, is that we don't actually get the money in our hands, but we get to have a choice of places that the